to stuff. I wade through this digital blur. Though my mind has been conquered, I need more than this digital blur. Yeah, okay. Typically, when I make one of these videos, whether it's the update ones or something else, I have a pretty clear direction on where I want to head in my mind. It'll be something that's been kind of, or like a collection of ideas that are kind of stewing for a while. And then finally, one thing that I encounter in media or just a thought I have will kind of help tie them all together. And that gives me like a driving point to work through. So for example, when I made my reflection on the album in the last year, I kind of was like, I knew I wanted to make a video like that. I knew some certain ideas I wanted to talk about, but it wasn't until I realized the vision, goal, plan layout that I've accidentally fallen into that gave me that direction to make that video and that focus, basically. So the reason I say all this is because haven't found that focus for this one, but it feels like it's been a little too long and a lot of things have happened and I want to discuss them. I wonder if you guys saw that spit just fly. That'd be cool. So let's do that. First things first, I guess, is how goes the daily goal of creativity. And this is maybe the main reason I wanted to do this video, is because I believe I've experienced the first truly major lapse since I've started doing this. And again, last year I had lapses, I missed days, but this was the first time that I went a significant period of time and I forgot. Like, it just was not in my head at all. I forgot to move that closer. How's that? Oh man, that's so different. Maybe it's not. I'm just gonna keep talking. The microphone was far away, so I don't know. I'll do something. Whatever. There's a couple of different reasons why this lapse may have occurred. I went through a low period at the beginning of this year. And there's a couple different reasons why I think that may be the case. And I don't know if I really want to explore them here. But I think actually forgetting to do the daily thing is part of why it occurred. They kind of fed into each other in that way. I was starting to feel a lot more like drifty, kind of a lot more of a slave to my like whims and like my weaknesses, being less intentional, I guess. It also has to do with the choice to incorporate more writing. A long time ago, probably like a year and a half or 2 years ago, I wrote this thing that basically was like, why don't you write anymore? And part of what I explored in that writing was like, I used to write a lot in high school, but like, I didn't write like for fun very often. Maybe that sounds strange. It's not that I was writing exclusively for like classes and that's what I define my writing as, but rather the writing was an escape from those classes. I didn't have any other choices. And so instead of doing math, I would write Captain Jack Sparrow or, whatever. Plus, I read a lot more in high school. I think because of those two things, I felt like I really enjoyed writing. And that's not to say I don't enjoy writing. I really do enjoy writing. But it's not as easy. This kind of hopeful thing to write more has been more difficult than doing the album was for whatever reason. I think part of it is because the album, like all the songs were written, right? All I had to do was record them, and that was not necessarily easy, but building from the ground up on something, especially a really, really large project, feels much more daunting. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I ended last year and I made that video, and I think I literally said in the video, like, I think I could do anything now. And I still believe that. But certainly, like, the daily grind of things makes it harder to accomplish that. That's not to say I'm giving up, but that's another thing I want to talk about as well. Um, so I'll just let the cat out of the bag. Everybody who's watching this already knows this, anyways, although I didn't necessarily announce it. But I'm trying to write a novel that me and Corby planned out back in high school. And so it's ideas that have been buzzing around for the better part of 10 years. And we're now really trying to flesh them out, and I'm trying to put forth the effort to get the writing done. And I'm happy with that. I'm excited about that. Um, it feels a lot bigger than the album. My secret, like, I didn't want to say out loud goal was that I would finish a draft of that book. And what I said out loud was I just wanted to make progress, uh, like significant progress, and I would know what that meant. But inside, I was like, I want to finish a draft of this book by the end of the year. And I guess it's still possible, but not really. It's not likely for sure. I don't think it really is possible. I don't think it's reasonable to believe that's even possible. And that's kind of a bummer to realize. I've reevaluated, and I've come across some different things specifically around the ideas of goal setting that have given me some stuff to ponder about. Um, the first of those being the idea that like goals aren't necessarily always the best way to accomplish something. And maybe that sounds weird because it's like, oh, well, we need to set goals. Otherwise, how do we know where we're going? And it's because a goal can turn you from a growth mindset to an outcome mindset. And outcome mindsets are good, right? Like we need those in order to achieve things, but they aren't always healthy, I don't think, from my understanding. And so, like, the reason I think the album worked so well and what I was working on, there were highs and lows, but like there was always this growth mindset where it was like, I'm just kind of trying this out. So whatever happens, happens. And now I don't, because of what writing is for me and because I've been doing it for so long, I think there's a difference there. Yeah, I think there's a difference there. I think the difference is in the idea that, like, well, you're good at this. And because you're good at this, you should be able to easily do it. And nobody has that expectation of me, first of all. I'm the only one with that expectation. But it is there. And I think that's the outcome mindset, where instead of being like, oh, I can learn and grow from this, it's sort of this almost like you should be able to do this. It's a should. We don't like shoulds. Often we don't like shoulds when we inflict them upon ourselves. So, what does this mean? What does this all mean? I'm not entirely sure. Oh, the second part of this. One was the outcome versus growth mindset. And the second is the ability to give up. And maybe that sounds weird. I listened to this conversation between this streamer and this psychologist, and the streamer basically said something along those lines, where it was like, I just know that, like, even if I quit on something, things will be okay. And the psychologist was like, you have a mindset where quitting is not a bad thing. And because of that, you can accomplish a lot. And I understand where he's coming from. This idea of like, especially in the idea of like, there's so many things maybe you want to do. There's so many things you wish you could do. And because of all of the different things, you just get stuck and you don't do any of them, right? And so instead, it's like a give up on some of those things for now, right? Like it doesn't have to be forever, but give up on some of those things so that you can actually accomplish one or two of the other ones, right? But I think also within that, there's something harder to explain. And I think it kind of comes down to how in control you feel. So, for example, well, the example is the writing, right? Because that's what I'm doing right now. So, Corby and I are working on this project together, right? I'm doing the brunt of the writing. Corby is helping me develop ideas, get through writing blocks, flesh out the world, do all the brainstorming. Like he's helping with all of that. And he's been driving that for a long, long time. He's helping create lists where we describe the characters and their attributes and who they are and why they do what they do, and working on character development and world building and all of this stuff, right? And the album was always me, right? I had people on it, but even the people who were on it, I knew there was like this degree of like, this is still my song, right? And so I think I said throughout the year, like, maybe I'll reach the end of the year and I just won't release it. There was always this like, I can finish this and then I can just choose not to let it go. And I think that was kind of helpful. I could just give up whenever I wanted. That would be my choice. And I've always had this like mindset with like group projects, I guess, especially like through school, where, I never want to be the one holding everyone back. I really push myself through those. Whereas my other work, I might be a little more lax on, right? I don't want to be the one preventing everybody else from finishing. And I think I feel that to a degree here. And again, this is not Corby, right? Corby is also like, he's not pressuring me. Like I went through a period of writer's block and I told him that, and he was like, hey man, like let it take its time. I don't want to rush this. Right. And that's like, thank you. Right. And he'll like not read the story for a little while. And he like apologizes to me for that. Because he's not giving up like comments to it. And I'm like, hey, whoa, like, it's whatever. Right. This is like, there's no rush. It's just about taking the time we need with it. And we both say that, but maybe we both kind of feel this like kind of dragged along in the current by each other, ironically enough, even though neither of us probably expect that from the other person. I think there's maybe like this, well, we're working together on this, so it has to happen now. And so I'm kind of grappling with that. And I want, you know, I think there's power in being able to say, my choice would be to let this go and not continue, right? And I have that option. And I think I need to remember that, because having that option relieves the stress of it to some degree. Man, I'm talking about this thing like I'm like struggling and perishing over it. And it's not that. I'm like so excited about it. It's just so much bigger of a project, and I don't exactly know how to grapple with that. It's been a weird year so far. I'd say thus far it's been better than last year was, so at this point, maybe. I've been dealing with back issues and stuff, but like, I don't know. I feel like I have greater direction in certain things. Um, yeah, I don't know. Listen, there's not like a strong, like I said at the beginning, there's not a strong takeaway for this one, and I'm sorry about that. I wish there was a stronger takeaway. I really did keep pushing off making this video because I was like, okay, where's the thing? Where's the thing that ties all of these thoughts together? And I never found it. But that's okay. I what I'm just trying to work through now is just the daily, right? And like I find myself lacking in motivation to write, maybe in a stronger way than I did with music, but I just continue to remind myself like any progress is progress, right? That's all that really matters. So as long as I continue to make the effort, that's the only thing that matters. As long as and well, with that, right? So as long as I continue to write and work on writing and read new things and explore different writing styles and grow in our creative abilities, that's success, right? I think the goal remains the same: make significant progress. And if that's the goal, I've achieved it. But I don't want it to end here. So I want to continue achieving that goal. And that way it's not an outcome, it's just a process. I think that's what it needs to be. It just needs to continue to be a process, and I'll continue cracking at it bit by bit. And just to prove to myself, and I guess to you guys, that it is a process that is happening, well, please enjoy this. Dare walked quietly across the sand on the moonlit night. He walked slowly. There was no reason to hurry. There was, however, an anxiety to his step. He was worried, though he tried not to show it. He scratched absently at his left forearm, where a small collection of mushrooms grew from his flesh. An invasion, a gift, and a strength. They were a plain beige color, barely larger than a fingernail, though covering a patch of his arm reaching from the wrist about halfway up to his elbow. He liked to believe he had fully accepted them as part of his life by this point, yet he still found himself scratching at them more often than he liked. Focus, he thought to himself. You only get one shot at this. He eventually came to a small stand of red sandstone buildings. There were only 5, not even a village, yet this was Dare's destination. Dare walked past the makeshift well that stood at the center of the buildings and went up to the farthest house. It looked the same as the others, reddish-brown sandstone with a rounded roof and a blocky structure. A large brown rug acted as a door. Is anyone in? Dare called, though he could see light coming between the doorframe and the rug. A man, perhaps in his 40s, with a bald head and square beard, poked his head out. What can I do for you? He asked in a hushed tone. This is the home of Bishop Kielna? Dare asked quietly. The man blinked, looking surprised. Have you been sent by the seminary? Oh, no matter. Come in. The bishop is in the back. He cut off as Dare smashed a cudgel into the man's abdomen. He grunted, collapsing as Dare brushed by him. He ignored the rich decoration of the room and opened a door to the left. It led to a short set of stairs down into a basement. Dare walked down quickly and entered another room. Inside, a man, probably in his 40s as well, sat up in bed, looking around confused. What? Who are you? Where's Dern? He yelled in fright as Dare ran straight at him. Dare was surprised when the bishop actually rose quickly and threw a punch. Dare ducked to the side, dodging the fist, and slammed his cudgel into the man's legs, knocking him to the ground. The bishop grunted as he hit, and began to move, as if to rise. Dare quickly smashed the cudgel into the man's head, knocking him out cold. He then reached into his sash and pulled out the object with deft fingers. Blood flowed from the bishop's head wound, though not so quickly that Dare was worried it would kill him. He did need him alive, for the moment at least. He carefully pressed the mushroom onto the side of the bishop's elbow. A brownish haze grew out from Dare's fist. The process took a few minutes. Luckily, Dare only needed the mushroom planted on a surface level. The process finished, and Dare removed his hand, briefly pausing to make sure the mushroom remained in place. Then he turned and left, moving toward the stairway on the opposite side of the room, and starting up the stairs, cudgel in hand. There was still an anxiety to his step, but he was far more relaxed than he had been before. Then, a sword was swung at his face. Dare just barely got his cudgel up in time to block. The wood of the weapon actually shattered, chips spraying everywhere. The man who had answered the door, who Dare had assumed incapacitated, staggered on his follow-through of the swing, nearly sending him falling down the stairs. Dare sidestepped in the cramped stairwell, sprinting up past the off-balance man, back into the main room. He was halfway across the room when he glanced over his shoulder. The priest was right behind him, sword in motion. He dodged to the left. The sword struck his side. Blood spilled to the floor. Dare cried out and tripped, collapsing. The priest stood above him, sword dripping red with blood. Dare's blood. He raised his weapon. "Unholy demon," the priest whispered, his voice filled with hate. Dare glanced at his own right hand and the near invisible fungus that grew there. He had one chance. The sword came down. He thrust his hand out, and a puff of yellow spores blew out into the other man's face. The priest froze, blinking, then began coughing as he inhaled the small particles. His coughing quickly became frantic as he doubled over, then fell to his knees. His sword dropped to the ground, forgotten. Dare stood, breath held against the dangerous toxins he'd released, though he had to suppress a grunt from the pain of his side. His eyes watered, though he was not sure if it was due to the spores or the slice. He walked, holding his side, to the door, and stepped out into the night air. He had to get away quickly, he knew that. However, he wasn't going to get very far with his wound. He made the mistake of looking at it. So much blood, he thought, horrified. He reached into his sash and pulled out a patch of moss-like fungus. He pressed it up against his side and felt the familiar sting as mycelium dug into his skin. He moved his hand, brown hazy dust dissipating. The patch stayed, acting as a living bandage. Dare wiped bloodied hands on his trousers, then walked out of the stand of houses, back into the desert. Bishop Kielna stared at the small mushroom planted in his arm. He'd hidden it from Dern. Kielna could be executed for having it, despite it not being his fault. Though his head pounded from the wound inflicted there, the bleeding had been stopped. It was of little concern now. Dern was in his room above, resting from the strange coughing fit he had undergone, which at this point was perhaps more concerning than Kielna's injury. The tiny mushroom, though, it seemed so imposing. He'd tried to remove it, but it had caused too much pain. Why would one of them break in simply to place a mushroom in him? Had they found a way to spread their condition? The thought chilled Kielna to the bone. Then the pain started. Kielna gasped. He could feel the roots moving under his skin, expanding, growing. The pain was sharp, biting, like a sand bee sting that expanded up and down his arm. In addition to this stinging was a strange, deeper pain, like an immovable pressure being exerted over the area of his arm. The new pain brought tears to his eyes immediately. He gritted his teeth, still staring at the mushroom, fear and shock coursing through his body, freezing him. He could feel the roots moving both up and down his arm. Small sprouts poked up just below his elbow, as well as just above it. The deep pain grew to an unbearable level, then stopped. Kielna frowned. The pain had been centered right around the mushroom, near his elbow. It was gone now. In fact, he couldn't feel anything. He poked tentatively at the spot by the mushroom. A large clump of dirt fell off. Kielna froze, horrified. His skin was turning to dirt? No, his entire arm was turning to dirt. He watched as more and more began to pour off of him, his arm beginning to disintegrate before his very eyes. Pain reappeared where sprouts popped up. It too grew to an unbearable level before ending. Dirt fell from his arm like a miniature landslide. His flesh began changing to dirt at both higher and lower points on his arm, depending on where mushrooms sprouted up. Kielna couldn't move, couldn't think. Blood began to pool down his quickly dissipating arm, mixing with the dark soil. But shouldn't there be more? There was a frighteningly small amount. It should be gushing. Instead it trickled, and the rate his arm disappeared only seemed to be increasing. His arm popped free at the elbow. Kielna retched as the remnant of his arm hit the floor. Dirt sprayed out, as well as some bones. His hand and a part of his wrist which the mushrooms had not reached. He felt no pain from losing his arm. It was as if it had never been a part of him. Roots stuck out of the stump where his arm had been. Dirt continued to pour onto the floor. The budding had spread past his shoulder and moved up his neck and down over his collarbone toward his heart. He felt roots moving toward it. Seeing that, he finally broke free of his frozen terror. He felt a new emotion spread through him. Urgency. Either he killed the fungus, or it killed him. He threw off his robe, grabbing at the sprouts coming out from his collarbone area, feeling them squish between his fingers, and pulled with all his might. The pain brought him to his knees. Around the sprouts, where he pulled, he felt nothing, not even movement. But farther out, where nothing sprouted, Kielna could feel the roots being ripped out. Kielna let go, screaming in pain, and felt the roots begin digging again. He had moved too slow. Like so many times in his life, he had let fear control him, and now he faced the consequences. Watching the strange sprouts grow and develop into mushrooms was like being caught in the open desert and watching a distant thunderstorm darken the horizon. There was no escape. This was an inevitability filled with pain that had no end other than his death. So, like any rational person who had realized this, he lay down and began to cry. God be willing, let me be given peace. I did my best, the bishop thought. The intense pain hit his heart. He gasped despite himself. Tears streamed down his face, dropping off the side and mixing with the dirt on the ground. The pain was so distinct, yet so alien. The strange mixing of the sharp stabbing throughout his shoulder and chest, paired with this unholy force upon his very muscle and sinew, was enough for him to pray for relief, to pray for an end. This prayer, unlike many others, was quickly answered.